Okay, so hello again, everyone. My name is Paula Taras, and welcome to tonight's panel discussion organized by the New York State Higher Education Services, also known as HESC. We are New York State's higher education agency, and we administer over 24 state-sponsored grants, scholarships, and student loan forgiveness programs. Our topic for this evening is how much financial aid will I really get? And when making decisions regarding where to go to college, many families face the critical question of how will we pay for it and how much financial aid are we going to get to help pay for it? So during this session, we'll talk about three major sources of higher education financial aid from the federal government, New York State, and the colleges themselves and private scholarships. So actually four. So this discussion will help set realistic expectations regarding whether or not your family may qualify for financial aid, specific factors that can impact the type and the amount that you may receive, and also will help you understand how any financial aid will be applied once it is awarded. So tonight we are joined by several financial aid experts from colleges across the state, representing both 2-year and 4-year public colleges as well as private colleges. And New York State agency HESC. So our guest will help us provide us with an insight in terms of important factors, relevant factors that impact the types of and amounts of financial aid that you might receive. So we can start off with Renee. Would you start off by introducing yourself and sharing the name of the college that you're from?
Sure. First, thank you all for having me this evening. My name is Renee Dennis. I am the Assistant Director of Scholarships for Bronx Community College. I've worked in financial aid for over 15 years. So I look forward
Thank you,
to helping
Renee.
you all tonight. You're welcome.
I'm Mary Lawyer. I'm the Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management at Siena, and I've been the college's Chief Financial Aid Officer for 22 years, but I've worked in admissions as well. So I have backgrounds both on the admission side and the financial aid side. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Stallman, and I am the Assistant Provost for Student Success at Binghamton University, and I'm also the Director of Financial Aid and Student Records. I have been on campus for just about 22 years and have been involved in financial aid for about 6.
Good evening. My name is Renee Swift. I am Associate Director of Financial Aid at Nazareth College, and I've been in financial aid about 23 years now. Great to be here tonight.
Great. My name is Maria Rodriguez. I'm a financial aid outreach specialist for the New York State Higher Education Services Corporation, or HESC. So welcome, everyone. A pleasure to be here.
Thank you again for agreeing to participate in this panel and joining us tonight. And thank you for the participants for joining. So we'll begin with some questions we have for our panelists and ask any of our audience members who would like to ask a question to please use the comments or Q&A section, and we'll discuss them either during the discussion. One of my colleagues will answer some of your questions, and if not, we can address them towards the end. So the first step in applying for financial aid for many is to fill out the FAFSA or the free application for federal student aid. So Renee, can you start out by giving us a brief overview of federal financial aid, who gets it and how much?
Sure. And before I get into that, Paula, when you have a chance to give me the ability to share my screen for the estimator.
Sure.
So as Paula mentioned, the main kickoff form for the financial aid process is the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. If you remember from the introduction, there are kind of 3 main sources of financial aid for students: federal aid, state aid, as well as institutional or monies from the college. So the main kickoff form for the federal aid process is going to be the FAFSA. That's going to be determining students' eligibility for federal grants that you don't have to pay back, in addition to federal loans that you would have to pay back after you're done with school. And then also federal work study, which is an opportunity for students to work on campus in exchange for a paycheck. It's a great opportunity for students not only to earn money, but also to get a little bit more acclimated to college life, get more involved, earn skills for a resume. It could be an experience related to their major or not related to their major. It's always just something that we promote very heavily on our campus, just for the sheer fact of students getting involved. You know, your student may be a little bit on the introverted or shy side, but they want to work. And that's a great opportunity for them to become involved on campus. And the best thing about it is they get a paycheck every couple of weeks, just like we do as regular employees. So the FAFSA is looking for information from the student and the parent as far as their income from 2 years prior to filling out the FAFSA. It's called prior year of income. And that's both for the student and the parent. There is a tool built into the FAFSA called the IRS Data Retrieval Tool. And it's a great, easy tool to use that transfers your appropriate base year tax information directly into the FAFSA. It's awesome, and we highly recommend it. So the FAFSA is filled out in the senior year for your students, October 1st of your student's senior year. And it's putting the parental income in there, the student income, as well as any asset information. And all of that is going to be plugged into this really complex formula behind the scenes that looks at those elements that I just mentioned, in addition to the household size. So that's the student, that's the parents, and that's any other siblings in the household, as well as other folks in the household that are supported by the parents more than 50%. That might be, you know, grandparents or another relative that is supported by the parents. So that's the household size, as well as the number of students in college. So if there are multiple siblings in college at the same time, that's going to make that that family contribution that I'll get to in a minute, a little bit smaller. So a lot of information is going into the FAFSA, and it's calculating what's called an expected family contribution. And that's really a tool that the financial aid officers use to help determine what types of financial aid you qualify for. And that family contribution ranges from 0 all the way up to $999,999. And your data will be on that spectrum somewhere. And the lower the family contribution, the higher the financial need that you will have. And you will be awarded financial aid that is more need-based. And then the higher the family contribution, the less financial need that you will have, and the financial aid will be awarded accordingly. So the federal Pell grant is a federal grant that does not have to be paid back. Federal SEOG is another federal grant that does not have to be paid back. Those two funds are kind of linked together. Federal Pell is determined off of the FAFSA. And then SEOG is a pool of money given to each college and university to dole out on a first come, first served basis, specifically for our students who are Pell eligible, and the lower the for the lowest EFCs within those Pell eligible students. So that money is given out on a first come, first served basis, and it's a limited pool. And that's why you'll hear from financial aid officers and your high school counselors to apply early, because you want to maximize your students' ability to get as much financial aid as possible. So the Pell grant and SEOG are kind of linked together because you have to be Pell eligible in order to qualify for SEOG. I also mentioned student loans. Student loans are more than likely going to be part of your students' financial aid offers when they when they're prepared for your students in their senior year. For senior parents on this call, you might already be receiving those offer letters or should have received those already. Student loans are relatively easy to get. You only have to do the FAFSA. There's no separate application that students need to do in order to receive those loans. They have a fixed interest rate. They're very, very easy to manage later on when students enter repayment. No payments are required while they're in college because they're focusing on being a good student and achieving towards that degree. And they don't have to enter repayment until 6 months after they graduate. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at the offer letters that you're seeing specifically, and I think we're going to have some visuals of this later, of what's specifically a scholarship or a grant, that free money that you don't have to pay back. And then the aids that are listed as loans that would need to be paid back once the student is done with college. And then also federal work study, as I mentioned. That federal work study is an opportunity to work. It's not a guarantee of a job. The student actually has to actively seek employment. And, as I said, it's a great way for students to become involved in campus. It's kind of a low stakes way to become involved on campus and get, a little bit more comfortable and confident on campus. And then they can kind of branch out maybe in other things, join clubs or different things like that are of interest to them beyond working in an office on campus. So federal aid is probably the biggest resource for your students, with a combination of federal grants, federal loans, and federal work study. And I'll just also plug another thing for the FAFSA. A lot of schools use the FAFSA data for some of their own awarding. So even though you might be thinking, I'm not going to qualify for anything, I know that, we still encourage you to apply because you never know. And you're under no obligation to borrow the student loans either. If you're saying, we want to try to do this without loans, we want to minimize our loans, you're not under any obligation. They're going to be part of your kids' financial aid offers, but you're under no obligation to borrow. But you'll need to communicate that effectively back to the colleges so that they're not kind of hanging out there as anticipated payments toward the student's bill. So hopefully I hit the highlights of the federal process. And if you are wanting to kind of get a sneak peek of what some of your federal aid may look like, I want to take the opportunity to share my screen with the federal aid programs website. It's called studentaid.gov. And I think we're going to have that as part of our resources for you at the end. So studentaid.gov, here is the landing page here. In this white banner here, you're going to see understand aid, apply for aid, complete aid process, and manage loans. It kind of from left to right takes you through the financial aid life cycle, from learning about it to managing your loans if you borrow loans at the end. So we're going to go under the understanding aid tab. And if you click on that, and I'm going to scroll a little quickly, and I apologize in advance if this makes people dizzy. I won't scroll too terribly fast, but if you scroll all the way down close to the bottom, you see this estimate your aid, get an aid estimate. If you clicked on that, if you went through all of the questions here, and I'm going to try to go through this rather quickly so that you can see what it gives you at the very, very end. So I'm going to click on start and put in this data, like I said, rather quickly, and hope my typing skills don't fail me at this moment. Plug in all of this information. You're going to be a first-year freshman. This is the number in the household question that I was talking about. So we're going to say I have 5 members in my household. I'm the only one in college. I did file a tax return. So the household income I'm going to say is $50,000. I'm going to say our assets are $5,000. So assets are going to be what's in your cash, what's in your checking and savings account, any stocks, bonds, annuities, mutual funds, CDs, those type of things that you would have. And so I got my household income, I've got my assets. We're going to continue. So this is telling me my family contribution that I said was from 0 to $999,999. So this is estimating my family contribution as 0. And this is telling me that I qualify for this much of the federal Pell Grant and this much work study. And I've always wondered why they give this weird amount for work study. Like for at Nazareth, our students who qualify for work study, we give them an allotment of $3,000 for the year. So I don't know how the Fed came up with this $1,815. And then also qualifying for, this is actually, I must have put in my actual birth date, which is weird. But this should say $5,500 autopilot there. So this should say 5,500. So this does a pretty good job. It doesn't ask all the questions on the FAFSA, but it asks the most relevant ones to help determine your family contribution. So this is available on the web for you to run your own numbers, and so that you can kind of get an idea kind of even before you get to the point of filling out the FAFSA, of what you would see for your estimate for federal aid. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And I think we're ready for our next question.
Thank you so much, Renee. So as Renee noted, your expected family contribution and how much aid you get, even if you fill out that estimator, it will vary depending on income, number of, people in the household. So that's one thing to remember as well. So that's why that estimator tool is a great tool to use. So moving on to our next question. This one's for Shanae. What are the things students should consider when applying for FAFSA in terms of eligibility and residency?
Okay, so nice segue after Renee pretty much broke down what you can get once you've done the application, but we'll take a step back just to kind of let you know who can apply for a FAFSA application, right? So for a student to be considered eligible, you have to have citizenship here in the United States. So that's either US citizenship or eligible non-citizenship as the student. That does not mean that your parent can be undocumented or not a citizen here. So if you are a student, you can apply, you can still apply for a FAFSA. I've had families in the past that were very concerned because maybe mom or dad didn't have a valid social security number and thought that they were able to apply for aid, and that's not the case. So as long as you as the student has a valid social security number with US citizenship or eligible non-citizenship, you absolutely can apply for financial aid. The financial aid application is something that you're going to renew annually, right? So I think Renee had mentioned in October. So every October, the federal government makes the FAFSA application available for you and your family to complete using the prior year income. So having the eligible status to apply, knowing that this is something that you'll have to do on an annual basis. And once you become a continuing student, meaning that you've attended college for a number of semesters, you also want to consider that you have to maintain good academic standing. So the standard of academic progress to ensure that while you're meeting the financial eligibility for it, you're also meeting the academic eligibility for the financial aid, right? So if you've completed your FAFSA application, but your grades are not that good, you run the risk of potentially not qualifying for aid for a given semester until you're able to increase that GPA. So we recommend, it's really not a recommendation. I think that if you are definitely wanting to ensure that your college is affordable for you and your family, that you at least maintain a 2.0 or above each academic semester to ensure that you will stay in eligibility requirements financially as well as academically for the federal aid and as well as the state aid. I think I covered it there. Did I miss anything, ladies? I don't think.
No, that was great. Thank you so much, Renee and Shanae, for that detailed overview of the FAFSA. So in addition to applying for federal aid, if you note anywhere on the FAFSA, once you apply for it, that you are a New York State resident or plan on attending a college in New York State, New York State also offers various awards to assist students in paying for college. So Maria, can you speak about the needs-based programs and requirements for qualification, postgraduate requirements for the awards that New York State offers? I can share my screen with the slide. Oh, sorry. 1 second. Here. Oh, Maria, I think you're muted.
Yes, I am, Paola. Thank you for that. So I was just saying that as Paola initially indicated, has administered about 27 different programs. And here is a list of some of those most popular one. We administer loan forgiveness programs, grant and scholarship. And I'm going to move forward to talk about three of the most popular one. And I'm going to start with the tuition assistance program, which is basically based on income, so any family earning 80,000 or less, or 100,000 adjusted gross income qualified to receive this grant. And it's to support tuition, so it will only cover tuition, and also the award will range from 500 to 5,665 per year, but it's going to be based on the information that you will be completing on your application, on your tab about the New York State income information. So the second it's popular scholarship that we have is the Excelsior scholarship. This one is also cover full in-state tuition for students who are attending SUNY or CUNY, but they will reduce any other programs such as Pell or any other program that cover tuition. It's going to also be based on family income that is 125,000 or less. And there are going to be requirements that students will have to meet while they're in school, which is that they need to maintain 30 credit per year, and also after graduation. So if that scholarship was given to the student for 2 years, they're going to be required to stay and work in New York for 2 years and so forth. So if they went to a 4-year college, the same. They will have to make a commitment to stay in New York for 4 years, okay? And then the third program that we have, I usually refer to that program as the sister program to the Excelsior because the requirements are the same. The difference is that this is for private colleges. So student can get up to $6,000, and colleges, or can opt in or out. So not all private colleges are participating, but we have a list on the website that you can see if the colleges that you're interested are part of this program. And the same requirement as the Excelsior in regard to income, 125,000 or less, on-time completion. So that means that, if you are searching for like an associate or pursuing an associate or bachelor, you need to complete that degree within 2 or 4 years. And the same with the Excelsior. And I think I forgot to mention that before. And then the same requirement, you will have to take 30 credit per year. And then after obtaining your degree, you will have to also make a commitment to stay in New York working for the same amount of year that the award was given.
Okay, thank you, Maria. So if a student does not qualify for needs-based programs, as you mentioned, the TAP, Excelsior, and the enhanced tuition, are there any other merit-based programs that they can apply for?
Yes, we have the STEM program, which is also a great program for students who are pursuing a degree in science, technology, mathematics. So, the student has to be graduating at the 10% of the graduating class. We will not be looking at the family income. We will just be looking at the talent of the student. And, the application opens from October to August. So students have a very long period of time for them to apply to that program, but they will have to commit to, Oh,
I think Maria froze up. Can she hear us? Can you hear us, Maria? Okay, I think we lost Maria.
it's awful. Okay.
Oh, you're back.
I know. I was like, I was looking at you guys frozen, so I don't know when you guys lost me, but can you just give me a?
You were talking about the post requirements for STEM.
Okay, so so STEM is another program that require you to, after receiving that program, that you remain in New York for 5 years after graduation, and you must be working in a approved field.
Okay, and I mean, can they find, is there anywhere they can find out what some of those approved fields are, or?
Yes, our website has a list of all those career. And, you know, if you have any question, you can also reach out to us and we will definitely provide you with that information.
Okay, great.
So we have a very extensive list.
Okay, and I have one more question on state aid, Maria. So what if someone doesn't qualify for New York State programs based on the residential eligibility requirements? What are their options?
So, you know, that's a great question, Paula, because I think, you know, we currently have a program that is the New York State Dream Act. And this program opened the door to so many, well, thousands of students who before didn't qualify for any financial aid program. They are now able to have access to the New York State administered grant and scholarship that I just spoke about. You know, in order for a student to be eligible under the New York State Dream Act, there are certain, you know, certain criteria that they have to meet in regard to citizenship or immigration status, as well as educational. And in the immigration field, the student has to be have a U or T visa, or they can also be part of the TP, the temporary protected status, which is the pursuant to the Federal Immigration Act of 1990. They can also be without lawful immigration status, including those with DACA status. And also, you know, it will also allow students that are lawful in the state and that their permanent legal resident is not the New York State, or that their parents live outside of, you know, the country. So it's important for anybody that can, you know, that is interested in those programs to visit the website and see all the requirements in order to, you know, to apply for them. And if anybody has any question, you know, we do panel discussion about the Dream Act. And we have video on the website as well that you can definitely, you know, see. And if you have questions, reach out to us. And one thing that I would like to talk is about the educational part. So a student also have to have a New York State high school diploma or a high school equivalency diploma, or if they're in college already, they have to be charged in-state tuition as SUNY or CUNY, and it has to be enough for the rest, for the reason of other than residency. And if anybody's have graduated high school within the 5 year of earning a high school diploma, they can also apply for this program. Okay, so please feel free to visit the website. I know that we will be providing some resources at the end. Yes. And if anybody has any question, I will be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Maria. So as Maria said, I'll be providing links with the resources at the end of this, so you guys have all this information. Thank you, Maria. So in addition to federal and state, you can also apply for merit-based and need-based aid at your colleges. Amber, can you give us a brief overview of merit aid?
Sure. I want to apologize for the sun being in my eyes.
You're fine.
I apologize for that in advance. So merit aid, by merit aid, what we really mean are institutional scholarships, right? So they're dollars that are not offered by the federal government or by the state, but by the college itself. The best advice I think anybody can give a person that is applying to a college around merit aid is investigate the schools that you're looking at. Everybody has their own scholarship strategies. Some people or some colleges will put that information publicly available on their website, where something might be as obvious as when you graduate from high school, you have a GPA of this and an SAT or an ACT score of this, and you're going to get this amount of aid, right? But not all schools are as forthcoming. And so it's really important to remember that it's individual to the colleges that you're looking at, and you should be contacting them directly to talk to them about it. The other thing I think that's important to remember is that I am from Binghamton University. We're part of SUNY, and we get a lot of questions from parents and families about scholarship strategy. When you've applied to, say, University of Albany, they might give your student a scholarship or you a scholarship. The same might not be true of another SUNY school. Just because we're all part of one system, it doesn't mean that we're all going to offer the same scholarships. And that does seem to be confusing to parents and students just around that. So again, everyone is unique and individual, and you really want to talk to them individually about what kind of merit scholarships they might offer to you, whether that be based on your academics in high school or whether it be based on income or both.
Okay, great. So as Amber said, something important to keep in mind is to actually go on to your prospective college's websites or call the financial aid office to get more information, because as she said, they're individual, they're unique. So whatever merit scholarship you get from one college will not be the same at another. So thank you. Finally, remember that there are many private scholarships available from businesses, religious institutions, your parents' employers, unions, and other organizations. And some of these awards may be based on academic merit. They might be based on need. Also your field of study, your ethnic backgrounds, religious affiliation, and also special interest. Mary, can you provide us with some resources or information on where families can go to get information on private scholarships?
Sure. So I think the most important advice I have about private scholarships is that you should never pay anyone to get a scholarship. A scholarship, if they're asking you for money or for a credit card information, then it's not a legitimate organization, in my opinion. I haven't seen any legitimate organizations that charge families for scholarships. So don't pay. Seeking financial aid should be free and accessible. So that's my first piece of advice, and probably the most important thing to remember. I actually like the website Fastweb. So fastweb.com. It's a website. I think they do a very good job at organizing and structuring their scholarship search engines around groups of students, from certain regions studying certain things in college, extracurricular interests. So I think they do a good job, and I think they do a good job at vetting their scholarships that they post on their website. I think a couple other things I would say is your high schools. High schools often keep really good lists, especially things within your own community. And some high schools actually have their own scholarships that they give to students who are going on to college. So their high school guidance offices would be another place that I would check. And the other thing is, once you get to a college, check with your college's financial aid offices. We can't vet every scholarship that comes in through our office, but we do a lot of them, and we actually publish them in our student digest online. And I really think with the private scholarships, sometimes they may be small, sometimes they may be large, but I am a big fan of every little bit helps. $500 is $500 less you have to worry about. That's a semester of books in most cases. So anything you can apply for and obtain outside scholarship. The other thing is, in most cases, those outside scholarships go with you wherever you go to college. They're specific to you as the applicant and the student, not necessarily specific to the college. So those are kind of my three things. Fastweb, don't pay, look for everything, and check with your schools.
Got it. Thank you. And you mentioned Fastweb, so I put that in the chat along with a couple of other private scholarship websites, collegeboard.org, scholarships.com, and Career One Stop. Thank you, Mary. So now that we know about the various types of financial aid that can help pay for college from federal, state, institutional, and private, let's get into some of the frequently asked questions. So question number one, what happens if a student transfers and they have awards? So will these awards, whether it's federal or state, follow them?
I'll take that. So when completing a FAFSA application, if you all have started that process, if you look under the school section, the federal government actually gives you 10 colleges or 10 choices that you can put on your application in order for those institutions to receive your FAFSA information, meaning those colleges will have the ability to determine financial aid eligibility for you, right? So for example, if you have Bronx Community College on your FAFSA application, and then Siena College on your application. If you decided in the fall semester you wanted to attend BCC, obviously we would award you the financial aid. The remaining eligibility that would have gone to you in the spring, if you then decided that you wanted to attend Siena College, that federal aid would be transferable. Similar to the state aid, but of course, any sort of institutional specific scholarships and things like that is not going to be transferable. So if you're receiving a BCC Foundation Scholarship, obviously it would not transfer over to you at Siena College, but they will then have the ability to determine any eligibility that you may have there with their institution. So sometimes once you've made a final decision, great, but you can always add, if you are looking to potentially transfer, you have the ability to go back into that FAFSA application and add that school to ensure that they have your FAFSA information to determine your eligibility. Again, once the school you're transferring from is made aware, we can have that aid removed for the upcoming semester to ensure that the new school has the ability to award you your federal aid at their college.
Okay, thank you, Shanae. Did anybody want to add to that, or did Shanae cover it all? Great. So here's another question for Amber, or anyone else that can jump in. Are there certain criteria that need to be met each year for a student to keep their financial aid?
There are. And so I think Shanae touched on it earlier when she was talking about FAFSA. There's academic criteria associated with getting aid. So remember that when you receive aid, that's either the federal or state government helping fund your education, and they expect you to be making progress towards your degree is the way to look at it. And so there are requirements on the federal side that we call SAP, right? That's satisfactory academic progress. And then there's also requirements on the New York State aid side. New York State aid is really closely aligned with academic progress and success, specifically, and really in all of them, but really Excelsior. So Excelsior, they want you to graduate in 4 years. Maria touched on that a little bit, right? There's an expectation that you will begin college and you will graduate 4 years later, and they will fund you for that period of time. TAP has rules around making sure that the courses that you're choosing are actually meeting your degree requirements. And so you really want to make sure that you understand what comes along with the aid that you're receiving. So while it is great that it is free money and it's money you don't have to pay back, it's really your responsibility to know and understand what the requirements of keeping that aid are and how long you're eligible to receive that aid.
Okay, thank you. So the next question, for Renee. Or anyone else, because the FAFSA and the TAP are needs-based financial aid applications, and families must provide their financial information on both the FAFSA and TAP based on their income tax returns. If a family's income or financial situation has changed from what they initially reported on the FAFSA and TAP, how do they report this change?
Yeah, this one has become more top of mind in the last couple of years. Given the state of affairs that we've all been amid and emerging out of. Mm-hmm. So the FAFSA is looking for a base year. So for example, the FAFSA that students, current seniors are filling out for this coming fall is for 2022-23. And the base year for that for the taxes is 2020. A couple of us have said, you know, it looks back 2 years or prior year of income tax for, yes, your tax information for the FAFSA. So it wants that information in there. So 2 years is a long time. I mean, if these last 2 years have taught us nothing else, 2 years is a long time. A lot of things can happen. A lot of, you know, some good things and some not so good things. So if the income tax that you had filed, you know, a couple of years ago or 2 years prior to the FAFSA was a particularly good tax filing season, but the current finances of the family are not as good. You still complete the FAFSA with the information that it's asking for, But then you will want to reach out to the financial aid office of the school, or maybe there's a couple of schools that your child is kind of, working with. You would contact the financial aid office to discuss what's kind of been happening. Has it been a change of income? Was there a death of a spouse? Was there a divorce or separation after the FAFSA was completed? Are there unusual medical and dental bills not covered by insurance, or, another, unusual circumstance that is affecting the current finances compared to what they were a couple of years prior? So you will want to have that conversation, and, we have to ask some uncomfortable questions, and it's just our way of trying to guide the process so that we know what documentation to collect from you. We're not, we try to do it as respectfully as possible, because it's usually around, some kind of bad circumstance that's affected the family finances. So it's just our way to guide the process to collect the documents we need, because we need to document why we would be changing potentially an element on the FAFSA. So you had completed the FAFSA with your income information. We are going to collect documentation that shows the status of the current finances of the family. And then we, as the financial aid officer, are going to log onto your child's FAFSA and make those adjustments in the hope of bringing down that family contribution and increasing their financial aid. Ultimately, the end goal of this process is to get your child more financial aid. On the state side, I might have to rely upon my colleagues at HESC. It's not as cut and dried globally. It more comes into play if there is a divorce or separation situation or a death of a parent. It's not necessarily that it's a one parent or two parent household and there's been a change of income there. There's not necessarily a change, a second look at a student's New York State eligibility. There's the flexibility is just, it's my understanding, are not quite there at this point, but there's more flexibility on the federal side to make changes on those data elements on the FAFSA, and ultimately, as I said, to get your child more financial aid. It's a paperwork documentation driven process. And it's kind of intentional that way, because we are audited every year by the federal government, because we're taking care of the federal financial aid dollars in a responsible way. And if your child's file is audited and we made some adjustments on FAFSA data elements, they would look at what documentation we collected and hopefully come to the same conclusion that we did. So it's kind of it serves multiple purposes, and, we're not making this process difficult. We try to, we support you all the way through it, and, upfront kind of walk you through what's needed. And then, it's kind of up to the family to decide if they want to pursue it. And a lot of times they do, even though it is paperwork heavy process, they still want to go through it, again, in the hope of getting their child additional financial aid.
Thank you, Renee. So again, I think one thing to remember is the documentation piece, right? To keep track of the documents that are being asked by the respective colleges and submit that as soon as possible so that you don't miss out on any financial aid opportunities. And I think we have a couple more questions. So before we wrap up, I know that a couple of our panelists are going to demonstrate how their colleges calculate the student's financial aid package. So going to share my screen. 1 second. I think we can start with Shanae.
Okay, sure. So this is actually an award notification that a student would receive once they've submitted their FAFSA application and we're not missing any checklist documents and things like that. They'll receive this award notification. And as you can see at the top, it goes estimated award offer. It's going to tell you what you're estimated to receive in the TAP, as well as the federal Pell Grant. And then for both semesters, both fall and spring. So it gives you the year, right? So as long, and again, we have to, a lot of parents and students are, well, why does it say estimated? The reason why it can say estimated is because, for example, we are anticipating that you're starting as a full-time student. If for whatever reason that should change, right? We then have to change your eligibility, because your financial aid is going to be based off of your academic load as well. So right now we're projecting that you as a student would be starting as a full-time student. That tuition would be $2,400. You then have $203 associated with fees, and then the book cost would be $682, bringing your total cost each semester to roughly around $3,285, and you're eligible to receive roughly around just about $4,000 in financial aid, which would actually give you an excess or refund that would go back to you, that could potentially help cover the cost of those books and things that you would be paying out of pocket. So this is the award notification once you've actually successfully submitted a FAFSA. I think the next screen that I had up was, if you went on to the CUNY website, you actually can do the net price calculator. So very similar to the government's EFC estimator. The college and most colleges have a net price calculator, but more specific to their cost and attendance, specifically for the schools that we represent. It's telling you here what your estimated tuition would be each for the year. And then it's letting you know that at this point you would qualify for the federal Pell Grant. This is how much you're going to qualify for the federal Pell Grant for both fall and spring, as well as the TAP, which is the tuition assistance. There is a scholarship that we're able to offer, but it is, again, it's going to be based off of the grades that you received from high school. The SEOG grant, which is associated with that federal Pell Grant. And of course, we do have the Bcc Foundation Scholarship. So you would want to inquire within the financial aid office to determine if you qualify for any of that. But with what we know at this particular time, you would qualify for roughly around $10,680 in federal and state aid, which is more than enough to cover the cost of the tuition and fees for you to attend the community college that I represent. If you needed to, which, the hope is that you would not, considering that the cost is pretty much paid for, you do have the option of borrowing a small amount in one of the federal student loans if you needed that.
Thank you, Shanae.
No problem.
And can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Amber, do you want to share your
Sure.
cost of attendance?
So I want to talk about the cost of attendance a little bit. So you should be able to go to any college's website and look for their cost of attendance, right? You should be able to search for Binghamton University cost of attendance, and it should be publicly available to you when you are looking to see what cost is going to be. It's a huge factor, right? So it should be one of the first things that you do. So when we show this to families, I want to point out something, the difference between direct and indirect costs, which you didn't necessarily see on the community college. So you're looking at tuition and fees and housing and meals, right? So those are what we call direct costs. And what that means is you're going to get a bill for those costs. The other thing that you're going to see, though, is estimated costs for books, transportation, and personal expenses. Other schools might categorize those a little bit differently, but what you will see is those included in a cost of attendance, typically on a residential campus, right? And so I wanted to point out the difference between those two things, because I think it's important to note the difference between what your actual billable costs are versus what your estimate or your indirect costs are, which are just things that we estimate that we know you're going to need to spend. The important thing to know about a cost of attendance, though, is that you can get aid up to the cost of attendance, not aid up to your direct cost. So it allows you to actually get a little bit more money and get a refund back in some cases above the cost that you're actually being billed for. I get that it's a little bit confusing, so I'm going to walk you through it a little bit more on the next slide if you want to go there. So this is an actual financial aid award. Again, it's Binghamton University. Not everybody's interested in a college like ours, but it's a good way to look at it. And this is an exercise that I go through with our students and families when they're saying, how much am I going to owe before the bill comes out? So when we're thinking back to what I just showed you around those direct costs, you can see that a family would be billed for the tuition cost. This is per year, and it's broken out by semester typically at most schools. You would have a tuition cost, an estimate of our fees. Those get finalized in the summer. So that's an estimated cost for us right now. And then we do an estimate of room and board, right? And so we have different housing communities on our campus. We have different meal plan options. And so for us, what we do is we give you an estimate. It's an average cost, and that can fluctuate based on what housing community you choose and what meal plan you choose. That is probably true of most residential campuses, where you've got fluctuations in housing prices based on singles or doubles or even triples, what housing community you're in. So you should see that fluctuate across the board. And then what we do is we say, okay, so here's an estimate of what we're going to bill you for the year. Then in the next block, what you'll see is all of that scholarship money, right? Those grants and scholarships that we've talked about around Pell, which again is a federal grant, which you don't have to pay back. So in this case, this student received $4,300 in Pell. Then they got $3,168 in TAP. Again, so we talked about that being a New York State grant. And then $1,375 in SUNY tuition credit. We didn't really touch on that, but SUNY tuition credit comes along with TAP, right? And those two together make up the cost of tuition, or can be up to the cost of tuition. So those are sort of lumped together, but that's what it would look like in an award. And then the SEOG grant, which is a federal grant that we talked about a little bit earlier. So you can see in total, those grants added up to $9,351. Then this student was eligible again for that $5,500 and those federal loans that we also touched on, which essentially takes your bottom line from that $27,784 after your grants and scholarships of $9,300 plus the loans, should you accept them, down to the $12,933, right? And so when I talk families through this, I show them what that would be, their bottom line is, and then you split that in half so you can understand what your costs would be for the semester. What I think is important to recognize is that there's a gap here, right? And so what we didn't talk about are private or alternative loans. We didn't talk about a federal Parent Plus loan. And so I think it's important, no matter what you're looking at, it's to understand what the cost of attendance looks like at that institution. We're all different just based on the type of institution that we are. Having a sense and walking through that EFC calculator, what your aid might look like, and then really looking at what your bottom line is, right? And so as you are starting to go through this process, you're getting your financial aid offers, it's important to do something similar to this, because you might apply to one school that's really expensive and they're going to give you a $30,000 scholarship, but your total cost is still going to be $30,000, right? Or you might apply to another school where they're not giving you a scholarship, but their costs are lower and your overall costs are still going to be less. And so we want to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples when you're looking at cost overall.
Thank you both for sharing cost of attendance and what a student's financial aid might look like after their scholarships, grants, and loans are taken into consideration. So I think we're running a little bit over. So I think we can take questions right now if there are any in the chat. I'm not sure. Maria, do you see any in the chat or comment section? Is Maria on mute again? I think you're on mute, Maria. Happens to me all the time.
Yeah, she's always my cue. We've been answering them, Paola, and I don't see anything new.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing. Okay.
Yeah, I think one thing that I just wanted to say is one of the participants was asking about, can they apply for scholarship now? And I told her that yes, but only for private. Since your child is a junior, you need to wait until the fall in order for you to start completing your federal and New York State financial aid application.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we can start wrapping up if no one has any questions. Panelists, do you want to leave any closing remarks before we leave? Well, first, let me say thank you to the panelists for joining us and providing us with all of this important information. And thank you for the participants for attending. And I hope that this information was helpful on your quest to learn more about financial aid. At the end of this meeting, there will be a quick survey. So if you guys can take a couple of minutes to fill that out, we greatly appreciate it. And I am going to share my screen so that you guys can see the resources. So here we go. Where is it? So before we go, if you guys want to learn more about the upcoming panel discussions we have, or any Wednesday FAFSA drop-ins where we help students and their families complete FAFSA and TAP applications, you can go to starthere.org/events. And if you'd like more information on the federal application, the FAFSA, you can go to studentaid.gov. And if you're interested in our over 24 state-sponsored grants, scholarships, and student loan forgiveness programs, you can visit us at hesc.ny.gov. And if you have any questions for us, you can email us at thepath@hesc.ny.gov. And of course, if you're interested in these great colleges, you can go onto their websites to find out more about them. And I can put their links in the chat, or can you guys put your links in the chat, panelists? And if you guys have any closing remarks, anything that you want the participants to take away before they leave.
I think it's really great that you're starting this process early. I think as your schools and HESC offers these sessions, it's really valuable, because sometimes the more you hear about it, the less intimidating it becomes. So that when you're in it in your student's senior year, you feel like you have a handle on it, because so much you'll feel like you won't have a handle on. So the more you can get this information, I think HESC does a great job providing information to our families in New York State. I'm happy to participate. So good job in getting here tonight, and good luck.
One of the pieces of advice I would give is, as valuable as the physical visits to campus are, virtual visits to the financial aid pages of the schools that your kids are looking at are going to be great resources. I think a few of us have said tonight, scholarship links, information about possible institutional scholarships, those academic progress standards for renewing the financial aid every year are going to be listed there. And you're going to find out a lot of information, and it, studentaid.gov, as Paula said, and the HESC website, we try to put information in multiple places so that families can find it easily. And certainly the financial aid offices themselves are going to be great resources for you. We work 12 months a year. We're there all year long. So some folks think that, very similar to high schools, that they kind of slow down or close in the summertime. Summertimes are our busiest time. And, we're happy to answer your questions for you as they come along, because this is a very stressful process, but we also want you to keep focused on the prize of how exciting this process is for you. So if there's anything that we can do to help demystify this process for you, we're here to do that.
Thank you, Renee. All right. So there aren't any more questions in the chat, right, Maria?
No, I think somebody just said, and I just missed it before, but somebody was just saying, where can she read information that contain all the acronym that we used. So I know sometimes we go into the financial aid lingo, right? And we assume that everybody understand them. But please visit those website and you will see that all that information. And if you have a particular one that we mentioned that you don't understand what it is, please type it.
Okay. Thank you again to our panelists. You guys were amazing. I appreciate it and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night.
Have a great night.